So, good evening, everybody. We're coming to you live on Facebook from Congregation Bethel, our Shalhevet class here in Missouri City, Sugarland, Texas.
It's a sold out table.
Sold out crowd.
There's a chair at the table.
And before we begin our regular class of Mesilat Yesharim, our normal study every Thursday night at 7:30 here. We'd like to begin with a short Dvar Torah on this week's Parsha. Now we see a very interesting thing. In this week's Parsha we see how Jacob marries, he's supposed to marry Rachel, but he marries Leah. What happens? He goes to her father, Laban, and he says, I want to marry your daughter, Rachel. He says, sure, no problem. You work for me for 7 years. You shepherd my herd. You take care of them. And then as payment for that 7 years, I'll let you marry my daughter. So what happens? He works for 7 years. And now it's that moment. It's that moment that he's going to marry the love of his life, Rachel. So what happens? Our sages say an interesting thing. A very interesting thing. Let's forget the story for one moment. God was looking, who is going to be fortunate that the merit of the Jewish people being redeemed in the future from exile, which is now, our exile that we're in right now. We're in an exile. We may not feel that way, but we are in an exile. We don't have a temple. We don't have offerings. We don't have proper atonement. There are a lot of things, even though we may feel comfortable in our jobs, we may be secure with our life insurance or with all of our other things that we have, but what we don't have is that closeness, that relationship with the Almighty. It's like, imagine you go to this guy under the bridge, and you say to him, so how can I help you? He says, all I want is a sweater, it's cold. Really? You're such a low level that all you need is a sweater? Don't you need a home? Don't you need, a place to eat? But he doesn't realize how bad his troubles are. Us, what do we say? Oh, we just want to succeed. We want to have this. We want to have that. We want to go on a vacation. But really what we're missing is that relationship with God. So God is saying, in whose merit is it going to be? So Abraham comes and he says, God, I want it to be in my merit. I want the future to be in the merit of Abraham. God says, why? Why should it be in your merit? So he says, because I was ready, it's a word in Hebrew called Mesirut Nefesh. I was ready to give my life for you. What? I had a child when I was 99 years old, says Abraham. When my son, my beloved son, turned 37 years old, you asked me to bring him as an offering, known as the binding of Isaac, where he strapped him down to a table, as an altar, right, for an offering. And what was he going to do? He was going to bring his son as an offering to God, to show his love, to demonstrate how much he's ready to give up in order to show his love for God. He's ready to give his son, his own flesh and blood, he's ready to give up. And of course, at the last minute, we know that God said, no, stop. Don't do it. You've demonstrated it. God says, you know what? Being ready to give up your life for me is not enough. So Isaac comes and says, can it be in my merit? Right? I wanted to pull the knife, what do you call it? That knife I was pulling that knife over my neck to be slaughtered. Right? At that same experience. I was ready to give up my life for you. That should be enough of a commitment, enough of a dedication. God says, no. Being ready to give up your life for me is not enough. Wow. Devotion and dedication is not enough. Jacob comes with his, and Moses comes with his, and all the great, great patriarchs of the Jewish people came, asked for the merit that the Jewish people be redeemed in the future in their honor.
Wow, I didn't even know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So 1 second. So who gets up and says, I wanted it to be in my merit? Rachel. Rachel says, look. Right? My sister goes, okay, so now let's go back to the story. Lavan says, no. You don't have such a thing where a younger daughter gets married before an older daughter, an older sister. It doesn't happen. So what does he say? He says, I'm going to switch, right? Because what does a bride go down the chuppah with? She goes with a veil. So Jacob's not going to see who it is, right? I'll be able to trick him, and really he'll marry Leah instead of Rachel. So Jacob wasn't dumb. He worked for this guy for a few years. He knew what he was in for. So he made a code word with Rachel. And under the chuppah, he's going to ask her for the code word. And when Rachel answers the code word properly, he'll know, it's Rachel. And if not, it's Leah. Comes right before the chuppah. Rachel knows that her father is the shyster that he is, and that he's going to switch them. And he's going to say, Rachel, you're not going down that chuppah. Leah is going instead of you. And you imagine you have over there, this is Lavan and this is Jacob. These are the, big families. They're going to have, 400, 500, 600 people at that wedding, especially if it was in New York, right? And it wasn't. It happened to have been in Eretz Canaan, which is the land of Israel. And they're having this big wedding. And now Rachel realizes, my sister is going to be going down that chuppah. And you know what's going to happen? Jacob is going to ask her for the codes. And you know what's the result? The result is my sister is going to be shamed and embarrassed. You're going to have 600 people saying, after Jacob says, this thing's a scam, Lavan, I knew I couldn't trust you, the girl's father. I knew I couldn't trust you. You switched them on me. So what does Rachel do?
Gives the code
She
word.
gives the codes away. Do you know what she was doing at that moment? What she was doing at that moment was giving away her entire future. Because she knows that her father is not going to change. And if Jacob decides, I'm going to wait around to marry the other sister, it's another 7 years to work for this guy. He's not going to work another 7 years. There's no way, it's gone. She's ready to give away her entire future. She's ready to give away the 12 tribes. She's ready to give away the future generations of the Jewish people. For one reason. For what?
Save her sister.
To save her sister from embarrassment. God says, in that merit, not being ready, not devotion, not dedication, overcoming a challenge, being ready to take it so that someone else isn't embarrassed, right? Someone else isn't embarrassed. That is the merit for which the Jewish people will be redeemed at the end of time and bring the Messiah. That is the merit. And God says, Min kolech mi bechi ve'enayich min dima. You can stop crying. You can stop weeping. You know why? Ki yesh sachar li'pe'ulater, because there is a reward for your action. Vishavu banim l'gvulam, because your children will come back to their borders. All of us, from Houston, Texas, and from everywhere else around the world, you know where we're coming back when Mashiach comes? We'll all go back to Israel, to our homeland. Vishavu banim, in whose merit? In Rachel's merit. Rachel demonstrated selflessness for who? For their fellow man, for her sister, for another human being.
God was more impressed with that.
Exactly.
And Rachel
God,
was the younger one.
Rachel was the younger one, correct. But can you imagine someone's ready to give up everything they have so that someone else isn't embarrassed? Many times we say, you know what? What's that? I'm sorry?
She didn't know that eventually she was going to marry Jacob?
No, for all she knew, it was over. For all she knew, she was giving up everything, all her future.
Right.
She was going to give up everything just so that her sister not be embarrassed.
But the question is, didn't Jacob get surprised?
He absolutely was. And that's what the verse says. The verse says, and he wakes up the next morning and he sees it's Leah. And then they switched.
Well, so why didn't he back out at that point?
Okay, that we can learn about that in our Breakneck Through the Bible class on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. at the Torch Center. We can talk about that, right? But that's where we do in-depth Parsha.
Are you saying he didn't even know until the
No.
He did not know.
Warning?
No, that's correct.
What
That's correct.
happened
Change the code.
So the
What
message
happened that
here,
night?
the message here that we can take home,
Time out.
that we one second, the message that we can take home is that the first is there's nothing more valuable to God than us overcoming our instincts, our impulse. If we're able to overcome an anger, right? I will tell you an amazing story. I know my mother will probably be upset that I'm repeating the story, but this is a true story. I spoke to my mother this evening on the way coming to the class here tonight, and she said that she had a very difficult day. What was the difficult day? In her office, where she works with many people, many coworkers, directors, and she's in a big school that she works in, prominent school. And one of her coworkers stood up in the middle of the day. She was about to head out to run one of the errands for the school that she does on a regular basis, and embarrasses her in such a terrible way. Just in front of everyone, and everyone is shocked. And what did she do? Nothing. Don't say a word. You know what the Talmud says about that? When you see someone like that, run over to them and get a blessing. It says that our sages, when they would hear such a story, they'd run to that person who got embarrassed and didn't respond and ran to get a blessing. Why? Because the Talmud says someone who's embarrassed and doesn't return offense, doesn't return a line back, or just lets it be. Lets it be. Such a person is forgiven all of their sins. A person who's forgiven all of their sins, go quickly get a blessing from them. They have the greatest power in the world.
Well, also, it's important not to humiliate someone in public.
Oh, for sure not. For sure not.
But and I'm sure your mom knows that, so it makes me wonder, why was it a bad day?
It's still very difficult. It's not, notwithstanding, we're still human beings.
Right.
It's like we know that when people pass away, they go to a better place. So why are we crying? Because we're still human beings. We're still flesh and blood, and we still have emotions and we still have feelings. Even that, by the way, has a limit according to halacha. But still, someone is embarrassed and they're able to overcome. That is the greatest power in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, she must
That
have
someone-
felt pretty good tonight, though.
Absolutely, and
Maybe
I
not.
said, please give me a blessing, please, quickly, right? I want a blessing. But you understand the value of that you're able to overcome.
Sure.
Our instinct is we punch back.
Sure,
No,
sure.
don't punch back. Don't punch back.
President like Trump could use a couple
Right?
lessons.
Well, we all can. We all can. And I think there are a number of things here. Number one is that someone else's feelings are very, very, very important. Right? Whether it's your coworker, whether it's a friend, whether it's your employee or your employer, or someone in your office building, people deserve respect and people deserve dignity. And you know what? Even if you were embarrassed, right, by them,
Right.
we learn from many stories that we mentioned in the past and tonight. We don't need to say everything. We don't need to punch back. Let's take it. Let's be the bigger person. All right? Hashem should bless us all, that we should always find the way to become better, to become bigger, and to grow and overcome these challenges.
Well, what happens
And
if
Hashem should bless us with a beautiful Shabbos ahead. I look forward to seeing you all here on Facebook. We're trying to do this before all of our classes, so you're welcome to join us. If you enjoy this video, please like it and share it on your Facebook page, and we love to hear your comments as well. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us.